My name is Maya. I'm 31, I live in Austin, and I'm the kind of woman who looks like she has her life neatly folded into color coded calendars and perfectly charged devices. I'm great at saying I'm fine before I even check whether I'm fine. Nick and I met the way people meet now, through an app. I'd told myself my heart wasn't a museum of old injuries. It was just a heart, something that deserved fresh air every once in a while. His profile was simple: jeans, coffee, a half smile that made him look like someone who knew where he was going. His bio said jazz, hiking, and honest conversations. I actually laughed out loud. People either write that because they're saints, or because they don't understand how hard honesty really is. On our first date, he was 7 minutes late and he told the truth immediately. Got stuck in an elevator. I almost took a picture to prove it, but I figured it's better to just apologize. I liked that, not the lateness, the lack of performance. We sat in this little bar with warm yellow lights, and at some point he said, "You talk like you want people to actually hear you." I didn't know what to do with that, because it was true and because being seen is terrifying. When someone really sees you, you can't hide behind jokes anymore. The first month were easy, like a new song you don't get tired of. We had rituals: Thursday, tacos from a food truck; Sunday, walks around the lake; random day trips when we felt restless. He brought me mandarins once because I'd mentioned the smell reminded me of childhood. I remember thinking, this is what peace looks like. But modern peace comes with a phone in your pocket that can destroy your day with one notification. At first, it wasn't something Nick did. It was something he stopped doing. He stopped asking about my day, stopped looking at me when I spoke. He was physically there, but his eyes were somewhere else. I told myself it was work, stress, adult life. We all get tired. That's normal. Then one night, he was on the kitchen stool with his laptop open and his phone beside him. I walked up and kissed his temple, and he flinched like I'd startled him. His screen lit up. A message from Liv, with a little heart emoji. I'm not the type to snoop through someone's phone, but I'm also not the type to pretend I didn't see what I saw. A quiet fear rolled through me. No screaming, no drama, just the feeling that the floor under my feet had disappeared. "Who's Liv?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. Nick flipped his phone face down so fast it felt like a slap. "Coworker, nothing," he said too quickly. I nodded, but something cracked inside me. One half of me wanted to believe him. The other half already felt the fracture spreading. The next week was a collection of small weirdnesses, a new passcode. Extra work hours, attention given in thin slices like he was rationing it. I caught myself checking if he was online. I hated myself for it. I hated the world we live in, where love can turn into a detective game. On Friday, he said he had a meeting with a client. I wanted to be cool, trusting, modern, but intuition isn't jealousy. Intuition is knowledge without proof. I drove to the place he named. I'm not proud of that. But sometimes the line between dignity and self-preservation is thinner than you think. Through the cafe window, I saw him. He wasn't with a client. He was with a woman, dark hair, easy smile. She touched his hand the way coworkers don't, and he didn't pull away. I stood on the sidewalk and felt the sound turn off inside me, like someone pressed mute on my life. I didn't walk in, I didn't make a scene. I turned around and left. because I knew if I went in, I'd fall apart in front of strangers, and I only wanted to fall apart where no one could watch. At home, I sat on the bathroom floor against cold tile and stared at my reflection like it belonged to someone else. Is this really my story? And in that moment, I understood something. There was no hiding behind work, schedules, or I'm fine anymore. Next came the conversation you can't calendar your way out of. Next came the truth, and the truth rarely arrives quietly. He came home late, smelling like coffee and confidence, the kind of casual smile a person wears when they think reality is still under their control. I sat on the couch with a mug of tea. I wasn't drinking. I just needed something in my hand so they wouldn't shake. "How was the meeting?" I asked. "Fine, I'm tired," he said, not really looking at me. I waited long enough that even he could feel the silence. "I saw you," I said. He froze, not a pause in conversation, a pause in his version of life. "Where?" he finally managed. "At the cafe with Liv." I wanted to scream, I wanted to throw the mug, but my voice came out steady, like if I stayed calm it wouldn't hurt as much. He sat across from me and dragged a hand through his hair. "Maya, it's complicated." Complicated, the favorite word of people who don't want to name their choices. "Did you cheat?" I asked. He swallowed. I don't know how it happened. At first we were just talking. I felt noticed, needed, and then it happened. It happened like weather, like an accident, like he didn't make a decision. A slow anger rose in me, not fire, more like acid. "You needed to feel noticed? Where did you put me?" My voice cracked. "I didn't want to lose you," he said. That was the worst part, because he wanted me and her. He wanted stability and adrenaline. He wanted to not pay the price for his own actions. I stood up. "I'm not competing for a spot in my own life. You're going to pack a bag and leave." "Maya, please." He reached for my hand and I stepped back. That night he slept in the guest room. I slept in our bed, staring at the ceiling like it had become Chijoy, like it belonged to strangers. The next days were fog. I'd wake up and remember, every time like getting hit. I tried to work, but my cursor blinked at me like it didn't know where to go either. Friends texted, "I'm here." My mum called and asked if I'd eaten. I said yes, even though food tasted like cardboard. Nick sent long messages. "I'm sorry, I'll do anything. Give me a chance. It was a mistake." I read them and felt two emotions at once, rage and longing. In the modern world, no contact is almost impossible. He could see when I was online. I could see he watched my stories. It felt like having an open wound and letting someone touch it with their eyes. On the fourth day, I texted, "We need to talk." Not on the phone, in person, and no excuses. We met in a park. The sun was bright, like nature didn't know my life had cracked. Nick arrived early. He looked tired, but tired doesn't erase responsibility. "I stopped talking to her," he said immediately. "That's the bare minimum," I answered. We sat on a bench. I kept distance, physical and emotional. "Why?" I asked. Not how it happened. Why did you let it happen? He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I was scared we were becoming routine. I saw how strong you are, how you handle everything, and I felt unnecessary. With her, I was a hero." It's stupid. I know, but it's true. The truth hurt because there was a seed in it. I had been strong more than I'd been soft. I scheduled love like tasks. I assumed stability would maintain itself. But even if I had flaws, none of it excused betrayal. Do you understand? I don't trust you anymore? I asked. He nodded. I do, and I want to earn it back, not with words. I stared at him and thought, is it even possible to come back from this? Can you rebuild something shattered without cutting yourself on the pieces? I don't know if we'll stay together, I said, but I do know this. If you want even a chance, there's therapy, actions, full transparency, and if I catch you lying, done. No complicated. He nodded again. Okay. Walking home, I breathed for the first time in a week, not because things were fixed, but because I'd taken back my right to set conditions. And sometimes in the modern world, that's the only way you save yourself. We didn't get back together overnight. I didn't fall into his arms after that park conversation like some movie montage. We agreed on a pause. 2 weeks. No, I'll just sleep over. No slipping into old routines. Only reality. I rented a tiny room for a little while, not because I couldn't stay in our place, but because the apartment was full of ghosts. Even our mugs felt like witnesses. The first therapy session felt surreal, sitting across from a stranger and saying, "My boyfriend cheated," is like taking the thing you've been stuffing into a box under the bed and dumping it onto the floor. Our therapist, Dr. Sanders, had calm eyes and a voice that didn't judge, but also didn't coddle. "You're not here to glue the relationship back together at any cost," she said. "You're here to find out if conditions for safety exist, and if they do, how to build them." Safety, a word I used to associate with locks on doors. Now it was about my chest. Nick came to the joint sessions and did something I hadn't seen him do often. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't immediately defend himself. But every so often he'd slip into his old shortcut. "I told you I'm sorry," and Dr. Sanders would stop him. "Sorry is an emotion," she'd say. "We need behaviors. We made rules. It sounds unromantic, like a contract, but I needed structure so my mind wouldn't spin itself into madness. Rule 1, 0 contact with Liv. Not we're just co-workers. If work required communication, it had to be official channels, and he'd tell me. Nick offered to switch teams. Rule 2, transparency with phone and social media. Not forever, not as control, more like a temporary bridge. He gave me the passcode, but I made a promise to myself. I will not become a police officer. If I'm checking constantly, we've already lost. Rule 3, weekly no screen talks. In modern relationships, people sit on the same couch while living in different phones. I wanted presence back. Rule 4, if he felt tempted to escape again, he had to say it, not hide. It was the hardest rule, because admitting temptation is terrifying. But silence always ends in lies. At the same time, I started individual sessions, and I realized something that surprised me. My strong girl identity was also a defense. I was strong because I was afraid to be needy. I didn't ask because I feared rejection. I said I'm fine because I didn't want to be labeled too much. After the betrayal, my brain became a lie detector. I listened for pauses. I studied tones. I analyzed everything. It was exhausting. One evening, Nick came to my rental room, not with flowers, not with gifts. He brought a folder. "I wrote something," he said, "not to you, to myself, about why I did it and what I'm willing to change. I want you to read it when you can, not in the middle of a storm." I took the folder and felt fear instead of relief, because if he truly changed, then I'd have to decide whether I was willing to change too, not in the sense of forgiving, but in the sense of risking again. When I read it, I cried. It didn't say, "You didn't notice me." It said, "I was afraid of being not enough." I chased validation. I cheated not because you lacked something, but because I avoided responsibility. I'm willing to learn honesty even when I'm ashamed. Ashamed, that word sounded different, more human. We started dating again, but like strangers learning each other. Morning coffee, evening walks, one shared dinner a week, no sex. I told him my body lost trust too. It needs time. He accepted it. Not perfectly. Sometimes I saw frustration, but he didn't pressure me. And I kept wondering, wouldn't it be easier to just leave? In modern life, people block, delete, move on. But my story wasn't about being right. It was about being honest. I still loved him, and I needed to find out whether love could survive under new rules, where the goal wasn't romance but safety. Rebuilding trust isn't a pretty montage. It's hundreds of small moments where you either build a bridge or set it on fire. My first big trigger happened about a month in. We were at a restaurant and Nick's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face shifted. Just slightly, but I saw it. He stepped away to answer. My heart slammed so hard I tasted metal. In 1 second, my mind flashed, her again. When he came back, I couldn't hold it in. "Who is that?" I asked. He sat down, looked straight at me, and said, "My brother. His wife's in the hospital. I didn't want to ruin the night, but I can see I already did." He didn't get annoyed. He didn't say, "Here we go again." He named my reality, and that mattered. "I don't want to be like this," I whispered. "I don't want to live in suspicion." "I know," he said, "but I made it this way. I'll be here until it passes." I cried in the Uber home, not because of his brother, because trust isn't a switch, it's a muscle, and mine had atrophied. Training it hurt. 2 months later, we moved back in together, not as back to normal, but as an experiment. We put a little whiteboard on the fridge and wrote, "What do we need today?" And every day we wrote one word: peace, space, hugs, quiet, honesty. Sometimes I wrote reassurance, and he wrote time. We learned to read each other again. Nick changed jobs. That was his idea, not mine. He said, "I don't want doors in our life that make it easy for me to run." I didn't know if it was necessary, but I saw it. Real steps, not just apologies. I took steps too. I stopped pretending nothing hurt. When I felt scared, I said, "I'm scared." When control rose up in me, I asked myself, what am I trying to protect right now? One night we did a therapy exercise. "What did you lose because of the betrayal?" I said, "I lost the ability to relax. I lost my innocence." Then, unexpectedly, I added, "I lost pride, because part of me thinks if I got cheated on, something must be wrong with me." Nick cried. Men don't cry often, and when they do, the air changes. "There's nothing wrong with you," he said. "There was something wrong with me. I made a choice, and I'm willing to live with the consequences." No theatrics, just truth. And something inside me softened a little, but then came the moment that almost destroyed everything. Saturday morning, his phone was on the table while he showered. The screen lit up. A message from an unknown number. "I miss you. Can we talk?" That cold returned instantly. My hands moved toward the phone like muscle memory. I could open it. I could hunt for proof. I could fall back into the hole. Then I remembered our agreement. If I feel like I need to check, I speak. When he came out, I turned the phone toward him. "What is this?" My voice was shaking. He went pale. It's it's her. She found my number. I didn't respond. I swear. I watched him. This was the hinge moment. If he defended himself, blamed me, got angry, done. Instead, he unlocked the phone in front of me, opened the message, and blocked the number. Then he sat down. I wanted to tell you, he said, but I was afraid you'd think I invited it. I was stupid not to tell you immediately. I get that this hits your trust. I'm ready to talk about what you need now. No hiding, no twisting, no complicated. He chose honesty, even when it was scary. And for the first time, I thought, maybe reconciliation isn't going back to the old love. Maybe it's building a new one that can only exist after both people stop performing and start living. Healing felt like a season with no fast-forward button. Some days felt almost normal. We'd laugh, cook pasta, argue over which show to watch. And then a random joke, a movie scene, a podcast about cheating would hit me like a wave. We were at a friend's party once and someone laughed. Rule number 1, don't text your ex at 2 a.m. Everyone cracked up. I felt like I'd been pushed away from the table because for me that wasn't a joke. That was a nightmare. I stepped onto the balcony for air. Nick followed. You're there again, aren't you? He asked softly. I nodded. I hate that it lives in me. I hate that even when things are good, I'm waiting for the hit. I hate it too, he said, but it's the price, and I'm paying it, not because I'm a saint, because I want to be your partner for real. Then I said the thing I'd been afraid to admit. I'm scared that if I forgive you, I'll look stupid, like I'm saying it's okay to treat me like that. Nick shook his head. Forgiveness isn't permission, it's choosing not to live in a prison, and you can forgive and still leave, or you can stay without forgiving and suffer. I want you to choose what's safe for you. That was mature and new for us. A few weeks later, we did another therapy assignment, a future contract. Not legal, emotional. We defined betrayal for our relationship, not just sex, but hidden messages, secret flirting, lying by omission. We wrote what we do if we feel distant, how we ask for attention, how we fight without humiliation, how we pause conflict before it gets cruel. Love in 2026, I realized, is part romance and part risk management. And then one night I discovered something else. I was ready to touch him again without fear, not after some grand gesture, not with music swelling. We were just in the kitchen and I was talking about work, about being tired of always being productive, about wanting someone to tell me, you can rest, I've got you. Nick walked behind me, wrapped his arms around me and said, you can rest, I've got you. And I believed him for 1 second, then 2, then a whole minute. We brought physical intimacy back slowly, like two people learning to swim again after almost drowning. I spoke up when I was uncomfortable. He stopped without resentment. We laughed when things felt awkward, and the awkwardness made us real again. One day I asked, did you ever think about texting her? He didn't lie. He thought, then said, yes, especially in the first weeks when I felt shame and panic. It's weird, but sometimes your brain wants to go back to the place you fell, like it can rewrite the story. But I didn't, because I realized if anything gets rewritten, it has to be with you, in truth, not in secrecy. I nodded, and for the first time, instead of pain, I felt pride, not in him but in us, in the fact that we could survive honest answers. We weren't perfect. We argued. I sometimes felt the urge to check. He sometimes shut down when he felt embarrassed, but now we had a tool. We noticed it and interrupted it. The biggest shift was this: I stopped asking, why was she better? And started asking, who do I want to be after this? I didn't want to be a victim, and I didn't want to be a detective. I wanted to be a woman who chooses herself and chooses love only where there's respect. When I said that in therapy, Dr. Sanders smiled. That's rebuilding, not getting the man back, getting yourself back. That night, Nick told me he'd joined a men's support group, not to justify himself, but to work on his patterns. I don't want you to ever go through this again, he said. My fear didn't vanish, but it became smaller than my hope. 9 months passed from the day I stood on the sidewalk and saw him with Liv through the cafe window. 9 months, almost a full pregnancy. And in a way, we were carrying something new into existence. One morning, we drove out of the city to a place with open fields and weak signal. At first, that made me nervous. Less signal used to mean less control. Then I realized that was exactly what I needed. A place where our phones weren't the center of the universe. We stopped near a small lake. The wind was cold, but the sun was warm. Nick pulled a blanket from the trunk and we sat in the grass. I want to tell you something, he said. My body tensed automatically. We need to talk had become an alarm in my system. He looked at me. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to just trust me. I'm asking you, do you see a future with me, even if it's not perfect? I stayed quiet, because that was the real question. Not whether I loved him. I did. The question was whether I could live beside someone who once crossed the line. I see a future only if we stay honest, I said. If we don't drift back into silence. If you remember trust isn't a gift, it's work. And if I remember I don't have to carry everything alone. He nodded. I agree. We sat there holding hands and I realized something strange. The pain didn't disappear. It became part of the story, like a scar. A scar doesn't hurt all the time, but it reminds you survived. When we got home, I did something I'd been avoiding. I deleted the old screenshots I'd saved at my lowest. Dates, messages, proof. They were my insurance policy, my weapon, my way of reminding myself I wasn't imagining it. But I also knew if I wanted to move forward, I couldn't keep that weapon in my pocket every day. I told Nick I deleted them. He looked at me like I'd done something sacred. Thank you, he whispered, then added, I know that doesn't mean everything's forgiven. It means you chose yourself. We didn't post about it online, no love wins, no inspirational captions. We just lived. And sometimes that was the bravest thing. People ask me, did you forgive him? And I answer honestly, I'm in the process. Because forgiveness isn't a button, it's a road. If people ask, aren't you scared he'll do it again? I answer honestly too. Yes, but now I know I'll survive. And I have boundaries. And love without respect isn't love, it's dependency. Nick learned small things that became huge to me. He started speaking when he struggled instead of running. He stopped hiding behind I'm fine, and so did I. One night we went back to the same bar with the warm yellow lights where we had our first date. I looked at him and thought, we didn't return to that point. We became different people. Remember when you said I talk like I want people to hear me? I asked. He smiled. Yeah, and I want that too now. I took his hand. Then promise me, if you ever feel that craving to be a hero for someone else, you come to me first and tell me what you need. You don't go looking for an escape. He squeezed my fingers. I promise. And you promise me. If you're scared, you say it. You don't build a wall in silence. I nodded. I promise. Maybe that's adult love in the modern world. Not a fairy tale, but an agreement between two people to stay honest even when it's embarrassing, to stay present even when it's scary, and to choose each other daily, not only when it's easy. And if you're listening to this with your own fears in your own body, I want you to know one thing. Betrayal doesn't define your value. It defines someone else's choice. You have the right to leave. You have the right to stay. But in either case, you have the right to get yourself back. Because rebuilding is always about love. But first, it's about loving you.